All right. Well, I think we'll do perhaps just a couple short introductions between me and Susan, and then we'll start, and we may have a few others pop into the site as well. And I know Emory Maiden has been corresponding with you all, and there will be recordings available. So if you were kind of split on different sessions, hopefully you can catch another one later and by watching online. So my name is Mary Beth McKee. I'm an IT consultant here at Appalachian State University, and I work with Susan Colby. Give you a chance to introduce yourself.
I'm Susan Colby, and I'm the Director of Faculty Development at Appalachian State, and I'm also a professor in the College of Ed. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. We'll talk a little bit about how we think about faculty development.
And I know people at universities play different roles, and sometimes titles don't really tell you a lot. As an IT consultant, I think the people on our team wear a lot of different hats. So we administer Moodle, which is our learning management system, but we also work with faculty to develop online training and just a variety of other professional development opportunities. So we have very close ties with the faculty on our campus. Each of the consultants at our school are actually tied to a particular college. So my college is Arts and Sciences, so those are the faculty that I really focus on. Obviously can help anyone on campus, but that's the area I mainly focus on. So when those individuals have questions, they can give me a call. And in our session today, we were going to share just a couple examples of what we're doing at our school to meet different needs. And then we're also hoping to hear from some of you as well, what you're trying and what's working, and hopefully just get good ideas from each other just by sharing. So on our campus, I think that every university has its own personality, and at Appalachian we have a strong tradition in teaching that personal connection is very important. So I would describe Appalachian as a little more reluctant about going online. But even with that somewhat reluctance going on, we still have faculty who say, I want to teach online, and students are different today, or maybe I want to teach a hybrid, so maybe make my face-to-face time truly valuable, but recognizing that online is how a lot of students want to interact and is more convenient for them, so I want to do that. So with that increasing demand for online teaching and learning, what we developed last spring was a 4-week hybrid class, and I called it On the Road. And I'm going to share a screen with you just so you can see the Moodle site that we used. All right, I'm hoping you all can see that. On the road to online teaching and learning. At Appalachian, we've tried different programs, and one of them was where faculty would apply and they would get an IT consultant to work very intensely with them to develop a fully online course. And then there was a stipend, and there were certain things that had to be developed in order to get the stipend. And what we found was we couldn't reach as many faculty with that approach, because then you're getting a handful of faculty, whereas the demand to learn about more online teaching was wider across campus. So we thought, what can we do that's perhaps not as intense that would complement people's schedules? So with On the Road to Online Teaching and Learning, this was a 4-week course. It was a hybrid, and really the face-to-face time was very limited. So we had 1 hour-and-a-half session to introduce the group and all the faculty to each other, and also show them, each of us were assigned a handful of faculty to work with for the project. And then we had this Moodle course available to them, and then they could pick what parts they wanted to engage in. So there was a few things that were required, but overall they could go anywhere in this. So for example, a lot of people use online discussions, so we had a special unit on that, or something on assignments. And there was a quizzing unit, but we recognized not everyone was going to necessarily use quizzing. And with this On the Road, again, it's a much more general, and the main assignment, the main takeaway at the end that they would work on is a roadmap for the course they want to develop. So if you're familiar with Quality Matters, we did not instruct people about Quality Matters, but we tried to model some good and bad behaviors. Well, actually not the bad ones, right? We only tried to model the good ones. But we also tried to make things a little bit more approachable. If you're familiar with Quality Matters, it can be very objective driven. And as soon as you say, we're going to do a unit on writing good objectives, this is the response you get. It's a lot of yawns. That's not good. So I called them learning targets instead. And just the whole idea of the roadmap is wherever you want to go, wherever you want the road to take you, let's make that clear for students. So they would come to this piece and we would introduce a lot of the concepts and let them work through here. So I'm working on a laptop and sometimes it's not as convenient as I would like. So for the final session where we got together, in this unit, so we had the opening session, which really was mainly about designing your course, giving your instructional technology consultant some of the background on your class, and helping you design it. The faculty would work individually through the units that they felt were relevant for them. And then we had something called student engagement, and that was where they would pick a tool they were interested in trying out. And they might decide not to use it, but it was just a chance to explore something. So the options that we offered there were Zoom web conferencing, Flipgrid discussions, VoiceThread, and then we also did Adobe Spark for people who are doing perhaps projects with students. If they might want to have them create web pages, that would be a way, a new tool for them to learn about. So, and those would be handled with the IT consultant. So we did it in a variety of ways. And that might have been contained in another site. And then our final session with the faculty for this was we had a panel discussion. So we invited in 3 faculty to share their sites, their courses, and more importantly, to share with this group what they learned about teaching online from their first experience. So we had someone who'd been teaching online multiple semesters from the College of Business. We had someone from the College of Ed who had taught just one class online for the summer. And then we had a math professor who was kind of showing some of the innovative things she did with her online class and just, you know, how you address kind of math anxiety in an online environment. So we learned a lot from that experience, and I would say we plan to offer it again next fall and next spring. And I think we're going to switch up maybe some of the activities that we do. But I feel we had a good start with that. And if you have other questions, I think what I'm going to do is turn it over to Susan. She's going to share another faculty development opportunity that we did with course redesign. And I can bring up that site for you to see as well.
It was on the other browser, if that helps.
I'm sorry. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
I have too many courses. All right. Take it
Okay,
away,
well,
Sue.
hello, everybody. So Mary Beth talked a little bit about the road to online, and I think there were some really fantastic things that happened there, and we'll get more. We're hoping that in this session we'll get a lot more about discussion. So I'll just show you a little bit of the basics. We also planned a course redesign institute, which I don't think is, I think everybody probably does something similar in their own institution. We used the DThink book, which you can see a picture of here, and we really tried to keep things focused on the backward design or the DThink model. They pretty much all start with creating learning objectives and then move through creating quality assessments, and then obviously what are your strategies for teaching that kind of content. So I'm just going to kind of run through a little bit about what we have on this site. We spent hours and quite a bit of time planning. So this is kind of the fruition of a lot of planning and putting it all together. But here's what these are what the participants saw. So we really wanted to have an engaging start. So we actually had a few of our own videos and tried to really get everybody excited about it. We also asked them to do a little prep work because we wanted to be ready to roll. The way we moved this, it used to be 4 full days, like about 8:30 to 4. And this year, this past, I guess it was May, we decided to go hybrid, and we actually did face-to-face all morning. We let them have lunch on their own where they were actually supposed to be applying the concepts. And then we had structured learning teams in the afternoon. And we learned a lot about that format since it was the first year that we tried it. But anyway, so that was kind of how our daily sessions went. So they were asked to come in ready, having read some things. We had them read a Threshold Concepts article, which is pretty delightful if you really want people to think about transformative learning and not just, you know, how do you help students learn pretty basic, specific facts and that type of thing. So we really wanted right away in the beginning to push them to those higher levels of learning, the kind that are enduring understandings. So they did a little prep work. Now we did buy a book for them. This little section that I'm showing you now is probably the most important for just planning and logistics. We had an agenda. I'll just quickly show that because sometimes it's helpful to know, whoops, how our 4 days looked. So hang in there. This is our course design agenda that they saw. We had our own very thorough lesson plans, but we did an introduction. We really wanted them to know about the course design process and significant learning, which is what DFINC is all about, the first day. And then they had lunch on their own, like I said, in learning teams. And we pretty much followed through on the 4 days. The second day, we really got into the assessment of student learning. And then they would bring their information about their assessments to their learning team in the afternoon. The third day, we started to really stake out and talk about the learning experiences and how they should be aligned to the assessments. We were pretty stickler on that. And then the fourth day was kind of pulling it all together, designing a course structure, and then completing the course roadmap. So that's kind of how our session looked. The overall bit. Woo, I just took us right out, didn't I? Hang on, sorry. I think I'm in Chrome. Okay, so.
I'm going to need to share your screen again real quick.
Oh, isn't that true? Oh, you're right. Okay, hang on. We're just getting going again. Sorry about that. I don't know what I quite did, but.
Oh, yeah. Here we are.
There we go. See, it's nice to be sitting next to a technology consultant on days like today. Anyway, so thank you, Mary Beth.
All right. And I'm also, with how I've done this, I'm used to dual screens. And if you've ever gone away from dual screens.
Yeah, you rely on those. Yeah. Okay. And I'm good.
Okay.
I think I can work around it. All right. Sorry about that little interruption. Okay, back to logistics. I don't think there was anything more on there. I think one thing I do want to show you is that obviously we had a lot of resources, DFINC and elsewhere, because really DFINC uses a backward design model. So there's plenty of things from Marzano and others. But we did spend a little bit of time at the onset really designing what is the product after they take 4 full days of course redesign. What are we looking for from them? And it could be a variety of products. You could ask just for a syllabus. You could ask for all sorts of different artifacts that show they actually were applying some of the course design principles. We decided, oops, I should be able to get that right. Okay, course design plan. We decided, I'm going to talk just a minute, and we could go into our Google Docs too.
This is going to take a second because you closed the window that I logged in. Hang on.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me just talk a little bit why Mary Beth, she's an ace at this, so we'll have it in just a second. But again, I'm just talking a little bit about, we really, before we did too much about what is the day, the different days going to look like, we really thought about what is the product that we want our faculty to come up with at the end. So we did a course design plan, and it was really based on the DFINC different sections. So they actually had to talk to their the life value of their course, which again made them think about transformative learning and not just all the different facts or concepts that would be learned during the day or during the course, but really what they wanted their students to leave with and what they hoped their students would look back on in after they had graduated from their course. So we started with just what is the life value of the course, and then what are your overall objectives. And again, in the objectives area, we had them design student learning objectives and outcomes based on Defink's sections. So they had to do not only factual understanding and all the way up, but they also had to talk about objectives that would be about caring and connections and things like that. So I'm going to show you our course design plan, and Mary Beth created a wonderful little folder. You can see.
Just do the template.
Yeah.
Show them someone's pictures.
So we kept Google Docs for all of our students, which were faculty, teachers, obviously, and it was very nice because all of the facilitators could see at any point in time. So anyways, as far as the product, here's our situational factors section. So day one, we talked about that, and then they would at lunchtime kind of write their own situational factors and begin thinking of the prompts about what are the situational factors that have an effect on how I teach this class. So that's what they're doing in this section. And again, this is all aligned with the Defink book. So we relied on that heavily. So they would write in these different sections. And the key question is, what important situational factors will help you design this course? And then they had to write a little bit about how they would handle some of those, kind of like solutions to those different situational factors. And so they would be working on this document, the entire Course Redesign Institute. And you can see we popped the specific area for the rubric right into the design plan because we really wanted them to see what we were looking for as they were working through the course design plan. So we tried to make this really the key product that they were using all throughout the whole session. Then we also had the learning goals. What are the significant learning goals, and what set of goals will provide maximum learning? So they wouldn't just think of goals in isolation, but a collective set of goals that would get to that life value of the course. So there's that life value that they had to articulate. And then we did put in Defink's different types of goals just so they were cognizant and didn't end up with all foundational goals or all applications. So we each graded some of these products after the Institute, and it was amazing, but I personally think they did a great job of pushing themselves to even think about how students learn to learn, and that idea of reflection and how important that is. Again, you can see our rubric was cut up and put in at the bottom of the design plan so that they could quickly look at how they were going to try to achieve at what level. Day two, we really hit assessment hard. I think one of our key principles was that the assessment had to align with the goals of the course, which is always easy to get off track, in my opinion. So we talked about summatives, and they had to kind of think about 2 larger assessments or one kind of a capstone or signature assessment, if you will. And they talked a little bit about what that would look like and what the criteria would be for knowing that students had arrived at that place. And then we talked about how formative assessments should be aligned to the summative, and that those would be the assessments for learning throughout the course, and that they would lead to the summative assessment. So they talked a little bit about that. Again, you can see our rubric. And then the third day we talked about learning activities and experiences. So how do your learning activities really align with your summatives and formatives? At the very end, and Mary Beth talked a little bit about this, we talked about putting it all together into a coherent whole for the course. And they had to talk about their course structure. What structure would help them maximize student learning across the semester to reach all the course goals, which is a big question, frankly. It's hard to tackle that one. So they talked about if they would design their course based on themes or topics or concepts and how that might look. And then what we did was Mary Beth had already designed the roadmap, which she used in the online course, which was great. And so then we asked them to kind of really plan their course. So in the Defink model, the final task we did not tackle during the Institute, but we would like to keep this group together, and we're going to offer some professional development in the fall that might tackle some of these topics. Okay, so if I do that, I won't cut it out, right?
Just hit stop share.
Okay, if I want to go back to the As You Learn site.
Okay, I'm gonna have to log in.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's our course design plan. I'm going to take you back to the our As You Learn site. So hang on just a minute. But that's basically how we started as far as making sure that we kept everything aligned to the goal of them creating a really fairly sophisticated course design plan by the end of the time that we were together. So I'm going to just show you real quick a little bit. Thank you. I won't pull up any more documents. All right, so that was what we graded in here. So we would, in here we had just a lot of different resources for them, some that from DFINC, but others. And then here you can see the days were aligned with what I was talking about. We did do a little PowerPoint slide every day just so that we would really scaffold the learning and stay focused. And of course, our activities aligned with these topics. And then again, we wanted to emphasize that we were going to continue professional learning now that we've got them as a cohort, and try to do things in the fall that will support their learning because they're at a different place than folks around the university that might not have had any of these concepts. So that's a little bit of how we did Course Redesign Institute and the product and some of the activities that we did. So anyway, we're happy to answer more questions that are more specific to what you want to know about how we design professional development. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll see what we have.
One thing to be aware of with both of these opportunities, often a question comes up with stipends. With On the Road to Online, it was much more of a, we're going to designate a month and we've set up some resources for you and activities, and you partake in what you want. And there was no stipend, there was no faculty buyout. It was just really a volunteer only. And Course Redesign had a slightly different model. It was a much more intense, essentially a week-long, predominantly face-to-face with some online resources and things they did outside of the workshop, but it was a much more intensive time period that they also applied for. But there was also no stipend involved. So it was really, you're participating because you want to participate, and it was open to the entire campus.
Right, and I'll just add that at first we were a little worried about that because for the prior years for Course Redesign, there was stipends. So this was the first year that we weren't able to do that, but we did have, 20? Yeah. 20 folks, and we thought that was a pretty good number, and we really tried to help them get this product done as they went along to the degree they could in a week. Obviously, that's not much time, because we want them to complete the course redesign plan, and then they'd actually get a certificate, which obviously doesn't mean all that much, but we're also writing letters to the chairs of their department and to them about how important professional learning is, and that they're also a model for the university for doing that kind of professional development.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We see our first question in the chat box. Okay, that's a good question. My university doesn't have tenure, and how do you get faculty involved? I think that's the question for faculty developers all the time.
It is.
You know, how do you get people interested in professional learning? And I will say that at some institutions, there's some incentive for doing professional learning, but at many institutions, if you look at promotion tenure guidelines, even with them, people are not always incentivized to do a lot of professional learning. So I think that's a really worthy question. What do you think about that?
Well, it is hard. Sometimes you can partner with departments based on our On the Road experience, which was available to faculty across the campus. The only prerequisite was at that point that you had something on the books either this summer or perhaps next fall or spring that you were going to be teaching a fully online or a hybrid course, and that's why you needed this type of training. So we had enough participants that way, but sort of a result of offering that campus-wide was we were approached by the English department, and I certainly don't want to get into stereotypes here about departments, but let's just say that some departments are more open to online and some less so. And across disciplines, our history department recently said, if you're going to teach in the summer, you're going to be teaching an online course, because that I know I can get people enrolled in, and getting people on this campus over the summer is not as easy. So if you want to teach a history course, it's going to be an online course. So their desire for online training and stuff just really increased. So for you, I would say if there are any departments, because enrollments are always a big issue, that are more interested in that, maybe target them. And once you start to get a good reputation, because I think one benefit we have is we're not a cookie cutter, hey, this is how you make a good online course and it looks like this. We always work with faculty and say, you're the content expert, so what is it that students need to learn, and let's work with you. I'm not going to start with showing you tools. I want to know what it is the students are learning, and then we'll go from there.
And I'll just add, piggyback, and thanks for the questions coming in. We'll definitely tackle those as we keep moving. But I think Mary Beth said something really important. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
And basically that was that reaching out to departments, I think, is going to be really key. We have a very large institution. We have 44 departments. I think we'll get much more broad engagement and faculty development when we start meeting the needs at a departmental level. So we've worked hard at crafting some workshops that anybody can come to, but then also making sure that chairs and deans understand that these might be some things that you might want to do in your department. So somebody had written about backwards design versus deep thinking, and I'm sorry if I can't exactly remember how I used that, or did you maybe? But
no, I think it was you. You're a deep thinker, Susan.
Well, I think that there are frameworks. Just backwards design is Marzano's work. Like, it looks like you're already familiar with that. And then deep think. The deep thinking piece, actually, there is a solo taxonomy which talks about the difference between surface level thinking and deep thinking. It's a pretty deep thinking kind of framework, and I don't necessarily use that with faculty. I think Bloom's is a lot easier for them to get there, to really understand and be able to utilize as they're developing questions and objectives. But if you're interested in reading about deep thinking and what that looks like, the Solo Taxonomy, and it's by Biggs, Biggs, and Collins, I think, Collins. It's an older framework, but it's pretty fascinating, actually. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, in general education, that came up in the chat box here. I do think too that it would be our hope that maybe that group, depending on how organized it is on your campus, we actually have a university college, and they actually have a first year seminar courses that are taught based on different topics, based on instructor preference or expertise. But that group comes together. So they actually do professional development learning for themselves as well. And so they might actually ask for something like to online or whatever the kinds of different things they do. I know they've had kind of course design elements at some of their retreats. So trying to really customize PD so that it meets the needs of a particular group. And then that way, I think you get broader engagement, especially when their director or their chair or their leader, whoever it is also engaged in that same professional development. That seems to help.
Yeah, I do always feel like as you start to partner with groups, you can also come up with different people on campus, different faculty who've used your services, and you can play off their interest and also their expertise, because often those are the people I call on to talk about what worked well in an online environment or a hybrid course versus a face-to-face. For many of our faculty, they're still struggling with the idea that learning can really take place in an online environment. There can be a lot of skepticism. So we definitely use those people to play off of and build up.
And that, I think, Mary Beth organized a panel at the end of the Road to Online that second day that she was talking about. And my personal thought was that was really excellent to just see what somebody in the health sciences had done, what somebody in math had done when, like she was saying, that when they're dealing with students that are scared about, fearful of math. So it's just really fun to have 3 different people come in from different colleges across campus and kind of walk through their online site. And I could see using that kind of a model or a technique in course redesign or almost any one of the topics that we try to enroll in professional development. It was a powerful experience.
And we, you mentioned earlier when you don't have people on tenure tracks. So we do try to utilize a lot of our part-time people. They speak to a special population. And it's also one that there are new part-timers every year. So to make them part of your professional development as examples of what can be done can be very powerful. But for them, even though they may not get tenure, they probably do annual reviews. So what we do is have our directors write a letter that goes to the chair of the department based on their engagement with us and their participation in various panels or special lunch and learns. And they just appreciate the call out. I think no matter what university you're at, I don't know anyone in higher ed who isn't facing budget constraints. You cannot reward people with money all the time. And I think what people value and treasure is recognition that at whatever role you play, you're contributing to the growth of this university and your experience is valuable. I think that really does speak to people.
I would totally agree. And I think that population non-tenure track faculty is really important. So we didn't talk about this today, but we actually also spend a lot of time in new faculty orientation, because that's the place where we grab them, and we're really working hard to provide sustained professional development or just a place for them to come together and talk about their experiences here. So we're actually really designing new faculty orientation for all of them. We had 80 last year. We're going to have probably 80 this year, which is a lot. And then our big goal is to keep them throughout the year. So real effort and intentional planning to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And then I think they come back when they start feeling like they're a little bit of a cohort in a group that's experiencing this place together. Yeah.
And this summer, as for us, I mean, we went straight from the semester to course redesign, and as soon as faculty were out of spring semester, it was course redesign time, and now we're gearing up for new faculty orientation and the next round. So part of what I've been working on this summer is revamping. What did I learn? Because what we always do is feedback surveys. I don't know about you, and I told the group and on the road, I said, just so you know, I'm not going to send you a long survey. It's going to have 2 questions. What did we get right? And what areas do we need to grow in? Tell me what wasn't as strong or wasn't as effective for you. And I would say overall, we got very good feedback, but people do point out some things, and you're always learning and tweaking. So when we did on the road, which was campus wide, we were actually approached later by the English department about doing a special 2-day intensive workshop for their people. And part of it is their building is going to be renovated. So teachers may not, no matter how they feel about online, they may not be able to get in the classroom. So how can they plan online activities? So it's a little bit different audience. And I think, because I'm not seeing a lot of questions pop in, let me just double check. I think what I'm going to do is show you some samples, and we're going to call it Bad Poetry. Hang on.
Oh, yeah. Jeez, no, that was awesome.
It's going to take me just a second to pull up the site.
That's great. And I'll just also, Mary Beth already said this, but I cannot, I really think we have to work through chairs and deans to the degree we can, even if it's just sending an email that say, hey, we have these types of things on our campus. Let me know if you'd like us to bring this workshop or this road to online to your department. I think that's going to be one way. And we probably are going to be crazy, hopefully. I mean, a good problem would be that we're getting high requests, but I think chairs sometimes do scramble for trying to figure out what professional learning looks like for their faculty, and they do write annual reviews, and I think most of them do care that we have quality teaching. So I think ways that we can help chairs and deans and directors help them figure out what they need, I think that's worth our effort.
Yeah. And we're also kind of exploring with some of this. I know some of you may be involved with badging. So for faculty who did on the road, they get a special badge. The English department that we're doing a thing for them, they will have a special on the road to online for English, and they'll have their own badge. I am sharing a screen, and I feel compelled to point out this is an example of a bad site. So based on the road, I wanted them to have a site, and I haven't done this training yet. This is going to be, I think, August 2nd and 3rd. But what I want them to do as one of their exercises is I'm going to add them in a student role to this site and say, this is a fully online class. You're a student in the class, go. And their assignment is going to be to name the top 10 things that are wrong with the site. And I am very good about making sure that there are lots of things wrong. So just a second, we're getting some chats.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. You brought up, yeah, about the badging. Okay, I'll be honest. People feel differently about badging. I'm not whole hog on badging, but that's why we try these things out and see if it makes a difference. And so for the English department, who in the rec comp area, the writing courses, they don't have as many tenure track positions. The majority really are part-time people. So some of them teach at community colleges, but they may also be teaching here at Appalachian. And so they get a lot more demand of, I want to teach online. And the chair is saying, I don't have a way. And so the badge actually works as a way to say they've completed our training. And it's a way for them to decide what the meaning of that badge is, but we can certainly generate it. So we're still experimenting. So you can touch base with us, and if you have ways you're using badging. Yeah,
Good.
Great.
Good.
So the site that I'm showing you now, again, a bad example. I have lots of colored fonts, multiple sizes. I thought I'd put the syllabus in the top box for no apparent reason. I like memes. I like, but I want basically for the faculty to work through this site, to tear it apart. And then what I do after giving them time to go through this, and I intentionally chose something, I'm working with the English department, but there's no one teaching online poetry. So I happen to love poetry. So that's our site, because it wouldn't offend anybody. But I was hoping that they could see right away where confusion sets in for a lot of our faculty with even face-to-face courses. Somehow in the learning management system, their idea of what's easy to navigate can really vary. So I thought, be your student. You don't know what the end game is. You just walk into this, and how does it present itself? And it doesn't do a good job. But then after I give them a chance to really tear it up, I show them the same site if it perhaps made a little more sense. So this is the exact same site, and all that you saw, this week 1 slam poetry as revolution and revelation, all of that content is right here. But what I want them to see and kind of understand is, wow, mentally this is much less strain. It also uses a lot of fundamentally good principles when you're designing a site, that there's a welcome to the class page, the syllabus tool. I've added this glossary so that if I'm using a bunch of terms you're not familiar with, you can look them up. And also showing them the idea of the weekly check-in. I feel like a lot of times faculty are debating how much do we want to hold hands of students, or do I just want to expect them to get it? So in balancing that out, we try to say, but if students know what expectations are and it's clear for them, creating this weekly check-in can be a way to do that. That I'm going to tell them, here's the targets, here's the ideas, the concepts that we're working on this week. Here are the activities that I want you to do, and here's how we're going to assess it. And with the group in the English department, these are people who care deeply about teaching. And that's why in some ways they're resistant to online, because like I care deeply about teaching. It's very personal to me, and I don't know that it can happen in this online environment. So part of what it's going to be is showing them the kind of good content that we can bring in that they don't necessarily have to create, but also dealing with other issues. We're a Moodle school, so I'm introducing here the idea of course completion. As students complete these various activities, the checks appear in the boxes. That helps keep them on target. With the English department too as well, I knew that there was a strong element of social justice issues. And part of my talk with them will be, wow, in an online environment, trigger events, that's a little bit different to handle. So how am I don't know that I have the answers for them, but I wanted to provide an example that maybe these items, these videos up here, because we're dealing with slam poetry, are required, and these are going to be optional, and that perhaps they could write a label or something that lets them know this contains strong language, it's not required, and perhaps giving them just sort of a warning in that way. And I'm going to go back to our chat for just a second. Badging is not only for Moodle. So different LMSs offer badges, and actually some of you, your microphones may be muted, but I think you can unmute them. If you scroll to the bottom of the window and go under audio, you should be able to unmute your microphones. And I know I've attended conferences, and there's a variety of badging things that can be added to LinkedIn profiles if you can't do it through your LMS and things like that. So this was just my example for how to organize things, how to indent things, just to make the whole site more manageable for students.
There's a question in the chat room about, do faculty seem motivated by the badging? I would say that for the most part, we haven't really enrolled it with faculty. And I would say that I'm thinking more that faculty are probably more motivated by documentation that they can put in their professional portfolio, frankly. And that's the reason I say that is I'm in the College of Ed. I was in curriculum instruction department. I was chair of that department. And they did have to provide evidence that they were learning and growing as instructors. So I think whenever you can tap into that piece, that is real for faculty, as probably you all know. That is something that is always kind of a stressor for faculty. So finding ways to help them document their excellence in teaching, I think, is very helpful. Badging, I think, has a place in that. And when everybody starts to learn what this badge means or what that badge means, I think that could be highly motivating as well. We just, on this campus, aren't quite at that point with faculty. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think just a comment on what Mary Beth has here. I mean, I'm really excited for her to show these two different sites, because I think what I'm learning in professional development is that the power of the example is really helpful instead of just talking about things. And I mean, everybody in this group, I'm sure you have already known that, but I'm first year as development director, and just finding ways to really make this stuff come alive is really important. It takes so much more time in the planning effort. I know Mary Beth has worked a lot on these two sites, but I think it's going to be a powerful way to open this this 2-day PD that they're having in the English department, because they're going to immediately see and be able to critique the difference in these two sites from a student's perspective. And I think that's really going to be helpful. So.
And one of the things I feel like, I feel very fortunate being in the UNC system. I feel like I have a number of friends and colleagues throughout who have shown me a lot of different ways to offer training. So I know I've gone to conferences where they've done the kind of the unconference model, which is kind of letting the participants decide what it is they want to talk about and where the discussions should go. And that has changed how I approach professional development as well. I never was a big lecturer. I'm going to talk to you for the next hour and a half. I do much better with, let's look at this together, let's talk it through and hear your ideas and bounce it off. So that's definitely something that's come through. And in course redesign, which was a much more time intensive, it had a lot of active learning pieces to it.
Yeah. We tried to be, again, very intentional. So we weren't just bringing out cool activities, but that they would actually be very focused on whatever our objective was in that moment. And it was hard because we actually had to cut out activities because we only had a 3-hour face-to-face block every morning. And we had a lot that we were trying to accomplish. I mean, a lot of faculty really don't know how to design quality assessments or even write quality learning objectives. So there's a lot that can be done in a course redesign institute, but you have to figure out what's the most important. That's the biggest job, I think.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions about like just designing any of these types of kind of more intense faculty development? The Road to Online was a couple of days. The Course Redesign Institute was 4 full days, and we still have people creating those products now that we're trying to grade and give feedback to and scaffold, maybe even meet with to help answer their questions. Is there anybody else with questions about what they're doing and you know, anything that's sustained like this?
All right. Well, if no one else has questions, I know some of you may have another session right after this one. And I know that Emery's going to follow up with feedback on this year's conference. We've gone to a fully online in the past. If you have attended, free learning has been a face-to-face experience. So this was our experiment with trying this conference online, which I think has definitely opened the door for a lot of you based on email addresses that you probably wouldn't have come to Appalachian if it was a face-to-face event. So as you're going to different sessions, we certainly welcome your candid feedback about what we can get right, what we, you know, how we can make things better.
Thank you